Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, We Love Tennis. Where on this episode, we are going to go down reviewing the latest tournament results after the festive season and New Year's Eve. There's been some activity. And then we're going to look at the ATP Cup, which is coming up, and a review of the Australian qualifying and some news going on in the tennis world. How are you, Rob?
So I'm well, thank you, Johnny. It's an exciting time. Looking forward to this tournament.
Yeah, glad that the Christmas festivities over and we've got tennis back. Come on. Excellent. Right, what's been going on, folks? Well, I'll tell you what's been going on. Not that much, but enough to warrant some highlights at the beginning. We've had the Delray Beach tournament, which Andy Murray was supposed to have attended. He did take a wild card before deciding against it through reasons of the quarantine and COVID and stuff like that. But more about Murray later on. So in terms of Delray Beach, it was an interesting tournament. I won't go through the ins and outs of it, but we had our very own Cameron Norrie making a big run. I actually put a punt on Cameron Norrie, folks, but when I put a punt on him, he lost. So I'm not too happy with Cameron Norrie. And who did he lose to? He lost to Sebastian Korda. Mark out Sebastian Korda, everybody. This guy is 20 years old. He's the son of Peter Korda, who was a top 5 player in the world. And he's a rising star. And he's been... Basically, he's been said that Andre Agassi has put him under his wing, and there's been some pictures with him and Agassi on the court. So maybe Agassi is doing a bit of coaching with Sebastian Korda. Anyhow, Sebastian Korda didn't make my day because he beat Cameron Norrie, and I wasn't too best happy about it. But he is a star, and I'll learn my lesson next time round. But otherwise, Cameron Norrie did well for everybody else. So if you did well on Cameron Norrie, well done to you guys. I just didn't when I picked him. So in the end, we had Sebastian Korda, my nemesis, then faced up against Hubert Hukaraz, excuse the pronunciation. This guy is a great up-and-coming Polish player, a bit of a serving giant. Some of you might remember him and the match he played against Novak Djokovic in Wimbledon. Prior to the pandemic, he took him, I think, to 4 sets. So he beat Sebastian Korda quite handedly. So that I chose Delray Beach because that was probably the tournament out of all the kind of mini tournaments that might have been going around at the moment. So we now move on, I would say, Rob, to the ATP Cup. Which is in its 2nd edition, following on from what happened last year, Rob.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Johnny. ATP Cup is here. Looking forward to it. We've got Team Spain, we've got Team Serbia, and of course there are other countries participating, and we will go through each of those countries. But for Nadal and Novak with their teams, it's the 55th time that they'll be meeting. And last time it was the mighty Novak and the Serbian team that won. So it's going to be quite exciting, simply because Novak is on great form. He's on really is in great shape. And Nadal has made a point of saying that actually in a recent interview, saying that Novak really is in great shape, great form. However, Nadal is confident that his team could do well. He's obviously got Buster Carreno in that team as well. But it is the 55th time that they're going to meet. But I have to say, Novak does lead 28-26 head-to-head.
Got you, Rob. I see that Novak came into Australia wearing the ATP jacket. I think just to highlight the fact that he won last year. And I think when you mentioned about form, guys, I think Robert's alluding to maybe the signs of what's going on in practice and behind the scenes, because it's looking like Novak's looking very, very good is what has been the rumour. around the tennis circuit that Novak is focused and lean and mean and ready to go at his favourite tournament, which is the Australian Open. Who do you pick, Rob, for the ATP?
Well, I have to say, I just think Novak's going to do something this year. I think Novak is going to win the ATP Cup.
With Serbia?
Yeah. Well, yes, of course, the Serbia team. Absolutely. When you look at his team and what he has to bring to the table, I can't write out Nadal though. He says his team is focused. They obviously want to win that cup, but I think it will be Novak. I don't know why. It's just a gut feeling. And, you know, we talk about the love for Novak, and we've said it in the previous podcast that sometimes Novak doesn't always get the support of the crowd and the love that he wants. However, if I just bring you back to last year's ATP Cup tournament in Sydney, the crowd chanted Novak, 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 and that, I have to say, upset Nadal.
Yeah,
so
you're right.
They are naming it this year is going to be a blockbuster.
Well, it could well be. I agree. So we're basically saying, folks, it's going to be a rerun of what happened last year, Serbia versus Spain. But I think everybody is probably asking if they're listening to it, because we have made it a USP of this podcast. Are you actually going to put your pocket money on it? And if so, Are you putting it on Serbia? Categorically. I'm going to hold you to it on the next podcast, because I'll tell you what, I'm not.
Well, I need to do a little bit more thinking about it. The only thing that just draws me to Nadal could be that the fact is Nadal is in fantastic physical shape. I know that he says that Novak is slightly ahead of him at the moment, but Nadal doesn't have any injuries, and he finished off last year really strongly, and he is in great physical shape, and that is going to be very, very interesting indeed, especially also with the Australian Open, where could it be a Nadal and Novak final?
Yeah, before we go on to that, I think you're missing, for everybody out there asking who's my money on for the ATP Cup, it's Russia, everybody. Because I'm going to say the combination of Rublev and Medvedev and Khachanov, that trio is by far the strongest team. So I'm going to say Medvedev is going to rise to the occasion. It's going to be the start of a glorious winter campaign. And I am putting my pocket money on Russia. So Robert's weakness in his arguments, folks, I mentioned 3 people for my Russian team. And Robert seems to think Spain is all about Nadal and Serbia is all about Djokovic. But we will discuss that on what goes on thereafter. But for everyone out there, ATP Cup, 1st of February to 5th of February. And that's your prelude to the Australia Open. Now, going on to the mighty Australia Open. My God, it's brutal, this quarantine, isn't it? They're saying that it's the toughest quarantine in tennis history ever, which is what's going on right now in the Australian Open. I think they've invested something like $140 million in all of this. They've got bubbles, they've got buddies, and I think you've got some buddy news at the moment in terms of these bubbles. One particular buddy partnership that was of note.
Yes, it's Nadal with Jannik Sinner. So Nadal has said quite openly that Jannik Sinner's got some great moves out there on the tennis court, moves that could potentially hurt him. So he wanted Jannik Sinner. And what a great buddy partner Jannik Sinner will be for Nadal, and also for the young Jannik Sinner to be buddied up with the great Rafa. Yeah. That's only going to do, wonders for Jannik Sinner's career as well, in terms of being able to practice against Rafa. But I would love to be a fly on the wall watching those two warm up and, prepare.
You're so right, Rob. And we did say it in the last podcast. Sinner was the man who gave the toughest test to Nadal in the French. So he is a shrewd, not only a great tennis player, but a shrewd operator as Nadal. His body choice is, is all that is either completely a good fortune or great pick in terms of buddying up. Yeah, Sinner is our dark horse, everybody, for Australia Open. Watch out for that guy. So qualifiers news for Australia Open. Some highlights. Our man Carlos. Robert called it first. For all those you listened in the first podcast, he mentioned a young 17-year-old called Carlos Alcaraz. Alcatraz is the jail, not his name's Carlos Alcaraz. As I said in this podcast, our pronunciations are going to be a thing on this podcast, and you guys are going to have a giggle. But seriously speaking, this guy's only gone and done the business. He's now qualified. Rob, your pick is looking like something which you should be quite pleased about, purring like a pussycat maybe, because this guy, his trajectory is unbelievable. I think he's now in just about 117, 120 in the world. He's from about 500 in the space of a year, and he's now qualified outright to the Australian Open draw. So it's going to be exciting times to watch this guy.
Absolutely. 17 years old. He's the future of Spain. Rafa, has always been looking for that person to take over his number one spot. Did you say, Johnny, that Jean Carlos Ferreira is his coach?
No, yeah, it's also I've seen that Carlos was spending some time in the Rafael Nadal Academy, and Tony Nadal's raving about him. They're saying he's got the strength, he's got the mentality, and Carlos already. I mean, sometimes you've got to be wary of big statements, but he's already talking about, he doesn't just want to make the numbers. He wants to be number one in the world. He wants to win a Grand Slam. He's got big shoes to fill in Rafael Nadal. But this guy's trajectory is looking ever so familiar, everybody, ever so familiar. So let's see what goes on. Some other notable highlights. We've got Bernard Tomic, the bad guy of tennis, is the only Australian to have qualified in the qualifying rounds. So he's through. Not everyone's cup of tea, to be honest with you, but he's made it through to the qualifying round. And some other notable highlights, and people who do YouTubes who love a bit of tennis aggro will like the fact that Viktor Trotsky has got through. Who will be the main partner of Novak Djokovic in the Serbian team. If you look at Tennis Aggro, this guy does his nuts in on certain calls that were made where he's screaming and shouting at Wimbledon. But from a tennis perspective, he's made it through to the qualifying. So those are the highlights that I would say on the men's side. What about the women's side, Rob?
Yeah, well, there's been so much talk about what's been going on in the women's qualifying rounds out in Dubai. Most people might have heard of Maya Sharif. She's 24 years old. She's 128 in the world. She's the up-and-coming Egyptian tennis player. She's been around for a little while and only earns about $200,000. But my goodness, did she storm through the qualifying rounds. She had an absolutely incredible first game, won that in 55 minutes, I believe. And she won that, no, sorry, I correct myself, 50 minutes. And she won that 6-love, 6-1. So she stormed all the way through. She's up and coming. I certainly want to see what she does in the opening rounds of the Australian Open. You never know.
Quite creative, I think, the way she plays. She's not one of these power hitters. She's quite creative. She has a bit of slide, she has spin, everything else. But I hear what you're saying. I've heard that name before. But for you guys out there, Robert is talking up big things for the Egyptian lady who's going to fly the flag for Egypt in the Australian Open.
Absolutely, and she's bound to not be a favourite when it comes to the bookies. Other big news. everyone kind of expected that Bouchard should have gone through in the qualifying rounds, but actually got knocked out by Yi Yun. So that's a big disappointment. And not just get knocked out, she lost 6-2, 6-4.
What's going on there? You know, former Wimbledon finalist lost against Kvitova. Got a hiding that day, if I remember. But the glamour girl of tennis that is on so many kind of adverts and pin-ups and stuff like that. I think, from my memory, it's the second year running she hasn't made it. And she's outside the top 100, right?
Yeah. I mean, for Eugene, it really is, as the newspapers say, a miserable slump that continues. Whatever it is, Johnny, whether it's mental, whatever it is, she just needs to pick herself back up again and just kind of just regroup in the sense of what she's going to do moving forward, because she should be there in the US tournament.
It's incredible because she was in the top 5, Wimbledon finalist. People raved about her. And now she's well outside of the top 100. It's just maybe it's one of those instances, Rob, that is two things at once. A lot of outside distractions with the modelling and other things going on. And maybe tennis has moved on. From my side on the women's game, Sabienka.
Okay.
She basically has done some big things, has won the Abu Dhabi tournament. And she is one of these power tennis players, everybody. Sabienka is somebody that when she's on her game, she can beat absolute anyone. She absolutely levers the ball. The problem is when she's off her game, the balls just go flying and she can lose to anyone. But it's just one of those instances when she gets a run together, she can basically demolish all in her way. And I think she won straight sets in the final and beat some notable names within that, one of which is Maria from Greece, who's in the top 20. But yeah, she's one to watch out for. She might just turn up with Australia Open and she goes back to Sabienka, inconsistent Sabienka, and basically hits 100 balls outside of the court. But that's a highlight from my side, Rob.
Yeah.
So in terms of other notable things, what about the British game, British side of things on the women's side? Anyone that's doing anything for us? Obviously on the men's side, we got Dan Evans and I think Carl Edmund and stuff. And so question mark about Murray. But...
Yeah, absolutely, Johnny. If we sort of go back to looking at the A Cup and also just talking about who's qualified, but Francesca Jones has qualified for the UK. For Great Britain, she's flying the flag high. She's into the Australian Open, which is fantastic because she's made it through those qualifying rounds. Still, in terms of ranking, she's in that sort of 200 plus group. So it's debatable to kind of tell how she's going to hold her own. My gut feeling is she's probably going to get knocked out in the first round of the Australian Open. But, it's good to see that Britain is waving their flag high. Coming back to the A Cup that's going to be happening very, very soon. And when we talk about those teams, and okay, Johnny, you've alluded quite nicely to the Daniel Medvedev and his team. But let me just remind you, Daniel Medvedev has just come off a hip operation. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, although he is focused...
Where did that come from? I did not know that, actually.
Yeah. No.
Forgive me, folks. What a glaring miss by myself. Thank you, Rob. Do tell.
I've been reading that the team should win. In terms of his group, and Daniel Medvedev, he's had a hip injury.
Operational injury.
Sorry. Let me just go back a bit. Operation. He's had a hip injury. I don't know what treatment he's had. Sorry, I'm just thinking of it in a different light. But no, he's had a hip injury.
Giving me palpitations there with my pocket money. Sorry, going down the toilet, everybody.
Yeah, I do correct myself. Just trying to keep up on the injuries and who's had what. But you know,
So many.
obviously it will have a big play in his game, possibly, because although he's
Yeah.
focused and they say he's back in it, we all know that the hip is a very important part of a tennis player's game.
Yeah, well, look at Murray. You know, obviously in all these hip kind of shenanigans. I mean, most tennis players play with something throughout the year, but they're supposed to be at their fittest and most injury-free at the start. Than what it happens later on. But I'm now worried, folks. I don't think I'm going to get a good night's sleep, actually, folks, after hearing the news about Medvedev, because not only is he carrying my hopes for the ATP Cup, but also the Australia Open. And we'll talk about another podcast, but I'm a little bit concerned.
Well, Johnny, it's a hip injury. Like I said, we all get things wrong at times, so I stand corrected. However, the game to watch in that A-Day, which in terms of the ATP Cup, I'm interested to see what happens within Group A, certainly, because, Group D with Daniel Medvedev, because one match that people are talking about, and I want to see what the odds are, will be when Daniel Medvedev plays John Inter, who has a big serve. Now, I'll be watching that with interest, because the great thing about the ATP Cup is it's going to give us a real insight into what Dominic Thiem is up to, in terms of what Daniel Medvedev is up to, Carreño Busta, and you know, some of the other players. I mean, you've got Schwartzman in there as well.
Zverev's playing, right? I think he is. For
yes, he is. Yeah. But you've got, you know, look, they talk about the Austria team, and they talk about Dominic Thiem as being able to hold the Austrian flag. But when they look at his other players in his squad, they just don't see how they're going to stand up to the likes of Marian Cilic and some of the others. But you've also got Diego Schwartzman.
No depth there, everybody in Austria. No offense to Austrians listening to this. You've got a magnificent player in Dominic Thiem, but this is a team tournament, not an individual one. And I'm saying it now. Australia have no chance at all. If I'm wrong, I'll eat my hat.
And didn't you say, Johnny, for Herbert?
Hooker has.
Yeah, you know, as a player.
Poland.
Yeah. You know, he's going to be playing Diego Schwartzman for the first time.
Oh, little and large. Little and large, everybody. So you got 6'6", I think, inch pole it's a great mover, big serve, with your mighty atom Schwartzman, which I really respect. This guy, what he makes out of his game for the lack of height, he puts down on his ATP profile. Everybody, he's 5'7". I do not believe that. He's obviously measured himself in trainers. He's about 5'5" at most. But this guy, for hitting the ball and everything else and maximizing his game, he's awesome. But I'll enjoy that match. I'll enjoy that match.
Well, I want to see the odds on that, because I reckon they'll favour Hurkacz because of his serve and, you know, how he's been playing recently.
Yeah, and form won the tournament, the Delray.
But Diego Schwartzman is a gladiator, and he can upset those big players.
He can, and obviously we've got the British team, everybody. We can't help but not forget about that with Carl and Dan, but not strong enough. They'll win one or two matches, maybe one match, but without the mighty Murray. I know you got Jamie Murray in the doubles and stuff, and Dan Evans and Carl, but it leads us on to Murray, actually. Worries about Murray. I'm not saying that Murray's going to make a big splash in Australia Open, because obviously with the hip operation and everything else, his management of expectations. But we all want Murray in the draw, right? We all want the pulse rating. I certainly do, because he's made me a ton of money, everybody. So I absolutely want Murray, not only from a British perspective, but also from my pocket perspective. But he's only gone and tested positive for COVID, so he's isolating right now in Surrey.
He is, Johnny, which is why when it comes to the ATP Cup, when I look at who the bookies favour at the moment, yes, you've got the Russians, you've got, so many, you got Austria in there, you've got so many groups, and we'll go through all the groups and we'll tell everyone listening which countries are actually playing. But Great Britain, they've put at the bottom. They've put Great Britain at the bottom because Andy Murray's not in it. However, I read articles recently saying that yes, Andy's been tested positive, but there is how a very small chance, maybe a very small chance, he might still be able to get on the plane. There is still time.
That'd be great. That'd be really great. I hope so. If you're listening, Andy, power to you. Rob and I from We Love Tennis podcast wish you well and want to see you on that court. So I think we've covered the ATP Cup. We've done an overview on the women's side. Obviously, from a women's perspective, we've got the big names, Osaka. We've got, obviously you've got to say Serena Williams, but I'm not going to put her in that top 5 to watch. You got Halep, Osaka. Who else would you say, Rob? That you think now at the moment we need to watch for in the next few weeks for up and running to the Australian Open?
Yeah, well, I've got my money on Naomi Osaka. I can't ignore Barty either. She got to the semi-final last year, didn't she? Got knocked out. We all know who won the final, but Osaka, she has won the Australian Open. She's won the US Open. Is she going to win the Australian Open this year? If I look at head-to-head, just let's just imagine that Osaka ends up playing Barty, being that Barty's number 1 in the world and Osaka's number 3. On head-to-head, they're both equal. However, Osaka does have an edge on hard court. But I also would like to see what Iga does. I was looking at the odds on Iga, and she's like in 14th place.
Yeah,
in terms of a favourite.
I think because the bookies are probably using the algorithms and looking back on past takes on first-time Grand Slam win, especially young age, and they're probably thinking, is she going to have a dip, or people are now aware of her? She's not that unknown quantity to just get through the draws. So they're probably thinking, no, we don't fancy her right now. Is she going to back it up? And I'm going to probably err on their side because I think it's very difficult to do that. Normally, history dictates there is some kind of blip before the trajectory goes back up. She might prove us wrong and blitz everybody, but I don't think so. My pick for everybody at the moment, I reserve the right to change my mind because we've got a couple of weeks, is Bianca Andreescu, the US Open winner prior to her withdrawal last year. So she what is my pick. She's an utterly talented individual, which is on her game. Her, Iga, Osaka, those 3 can really prove one hell of a rivalry. The only downside, her coach has only gone and tested positive for COVID. This COVID is hanging over everything, as always.
Well, it's an interesting pick, Bianca, because she's at 14-1, and she's tied with Iga Swiatek.
Good odds. Good odds.
Yeah, so you put a little bit of money on her getting to the final, even if you do each way, Johnny. Crikey, that could be quite good.
Well, I am now after Robert's told me the odds. Robert's the odds man, everybody. He's going to give us a lowdown on the men's side, but after those 14-1, 14-1, I'm going to have some of that.
And I have to say, in the past when we've played, when we've been looking at matches and we've been doing our analysing, one thing that Johnny and I do, we spend a lot of time really looking at the players, their head-to-head between games. And also there's that gut feeling on the day. I mean, just taking you back to a previous podcast when we were talking about the French Open. And I remember watching the French Open and I phoned up Johnny and I said, you know what, this player is a massive underdog, but they got the crowd behind him. They got the crowd cheering. There's no way that this person should beat this top seed, but they did. because when you just feel it, you feel it in your bones, it's going to happen, and the players got the crowd on their side. That's how I felt about Naomi Osaka when she won the US. And of course, she then kind of not played in the French Open, and then obviously we know that Iga Swiatek did very well in that. But that Iga's got many years ahead of her. I mean, Ashley Barty as well.
Home tournament, yeah.
Yeah, home tournament, semi-final last year, got knocked out by Sophia Kenin. And then when you look at where Sophia Kenin is now, Sophia Kenin is just above Simona Halep with the bookies at 12-1. I mean, Serena Williams, everybody, is fourth in the mix. I know Serena wants her 24th Grand Slam, but
not going to happen.
I agree. I just can't see it. But you know what? I'm going to watch Simona Halep very closely, because I do like her, and I think she's had a little bit of a bad run last year, and slightly upsetting. All the analysts were all saying that there are better players out there. But you can't ignore the fact that she's been number one in the world before.
Wimbledon victory over Serena and everything. She's a top quality act. She really is, Simona Halep. Those odds are tremendous as well. But those Bianca 14-1 odds are very, very tasty indeed. Yes, that's definitely caught my eye, I think.
And the odds are good. And usually when we do this, I generally do a bit better than Johnny when I guess the favourite. I mean, I had it down in the French Open. I had Novak and Nadal.
No, he doesn't. He's lying, everybody.
Well, I had Novak and Nadal each way, and I was just enjoying that final. No matter what happened, I knew I was a winner.
Yeah, Robert,
and I could celebrate. So
I tend to pick the more riskier dark horses or the bigger odds. But one thing we both do, and we will give our pennies worth, obviously, everything carries a health warning, everybody. And you have to use your own discretion and make sure you only play with pocket money. But we also assess whether the odds are good or not, because sometimes it's a bad bet is not worth it at all. It's better to have no bet. And we all know the bookies kind of put the odds in their favor. So we also not just analyze the form and the players who we think and everything else. We also analyze the value for money on the odds. Is the odds worth the risk? And is the odds value for money? Have they got it wrong? And I think Andreescu is one which has caught my eye, and that's an important point. And you'll see this constantly throughout the year. We will walk away from bets literally if we think, the odds makers are just making it just not good value, or we actually think, they've got it wrong from our perspective. That's why.
At the end of the day, it's fun for us.
Of course,
we enjoy it. We love tennis. Yeah. We love playing it. It's fun, and we want to win when the players win, and that's what makes it exciting.
And you guys are going to enjoy seeing us and our debates on that, and who is leading and who's not, and who's weeping and who's actually jumping up for joy. So lastly, on our last item, men's odds. Break it down, Rob, and hit us with the odds for the men's.
Right, okay. So there is no great surprise, and I'm still going to call it. It's going to be a Novak final, right? 100%. I know that Novak is absolutely dying to get that next Grand Slam. He wants to catch Rafa and Federer. And I have to say, I'm disappointed. I'm so disappointed again. Another tournament that we're not going to see Federer in. I'm almost wondering whether Federer's ever going to play another tennis tournament again at this rate. Well, certainly with Covid-19 around, I have to question it. Hopefully he'll come back for the Great Wimbledon. I must see Federer play again.
But no, you're right. I think he said he didn't want to play tennis without fans. It just doesn't do it for him. But my argument could be that Australia, at least you're guaranteed fans. Who's to say there's going to be fans at Wimbledon or the Olympics in Tokyo? And because let's face it, if he's going to come back everybody, we all know is going to be geared around the summer. And I don't think he fancied the quarantine and 2 weeks isolation and this stage of his career. But I agree with you, Rob. It is a gaping hole, but we've got so much else to look forward to. My worry with Novak's odds, now, I agree. I concur. You are, most likely right with Novak reaching the final at the very least. However, the odds are not that desirable, are they? Let's face it.
Well, look.
What are they?
It's 5-4. Okay. Now, usually, in the French Open, Novak was like 7-1 or something like that at the beginning. It was ridiculous. And I said to you, I'm going to have some of that. I just feel it. But Rafa, 5-1. Now that's a good odd. So, I'm intrigued at the moment because my favourite players are the Daniel Medvedevs, the
What's his
Donovan
odds?
team.
Medvedev?
Yeah, so Daniel Medvedev again 5-1. Donovan team 5-1.
Oh,
Interesting, all 5-1.
Yeah,
then you've got an outside Tsitsipas at 12-1, and of course, for a bit of fun, you've got Jannik Sinner and people in there at 40-1. But look,
not ready yet.
Not going to happen. Jannik Sinner's a great player. He'll probably get through to the last rounds, perhaps before the quarterfinals.
Fourth round, maybe.
Yeah. There's certainly going to be interesting developments with Denis Shapovalov, Jannik Sinner. Let's see what Carlos does as well.
We've also got Lorenzo Mazzetti, everybody. He's in the third round of qualifying, round 32 of qualifying for the Australia Open. He's a rising star. We've mentioned it before, so I'm watching what goes on with that. He plays Petrovic. So if anyone fancies a punt on the qualifying rounds, I normally don't touch it with a barge pole. I would put a punt on Mazzetti if the odds are favourable. I haven't seen the odds. So you're saying overall to everybody, you've got Novak, who's the outright favourite, a bit like the reverse of Nadal with the French. Very mean odds by the bookies, 5-4 at this stage of the proceedings. And then you've got a whole bunch of three of them, the three amigos of Medvedev, team, and who's the third?
Rafa.
What about Zverev?
Right. Well, Zverev is 16-1. So, Tsitsipas is definitely in front of Zverev. But then again, is that any?
Well, he's got a big Greek crowd offering Tsitsipas, a big Greek contingent in Melbourne. And also he reached the semi and he beat Federer before losing to Nadal. But,
I would certainly put a bet on Tsitsipas, getting to the semi-final or something along those lines. Zverev, in the last few tournaments, I've watched Zverev in, it's that second serve, it's that issue that he has mentally. Is it quite there, the game, to get to the final? Not really sure. I would want to see that he starts off in the way that he should, in the sense of not having that kind of nervous second serve. But Daniel Medvedev, forget about the hip injury.
Shapovalov, what's his odds?
Well, his odds are still 5-1. So he's actually equal with Rafa and Donovan team. But I think
not Shapovalov. You mean?
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Daniel Medvedev.
Sorry, Shapovalov, Dennis the Menace.
Oh right, okay, 40-1.
Yeah, he's not ready. That tempts me. But it might be going down mug lane, to be honest with you. Sometimes odds are there just to tempt you for tempting sake.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I know for a fact, and I will absolutely put my money on each way. What I want to see that happens with Novak is, I suppose. Well, the odds aren't going to change unless he has some tricky first games where he's got to fight back, as we know. Rafa there's something special about Rafa at the moment. We talk about the A Cup and Spain want that win against Serbia. Serbia won last year. But I think there's something special about Rafa at the moment. And would Dominic Thiem or Daniel Medvedev get to the Australian final? You know, those two players, they're so equal in many different ways. But I am wondering whether, you know, Rafa, he's in shape at the moment that and normally you expect Rafa to have an injury or something like that. He hasn't. So I do wonder, could Rafa knock out Dominic Thiem or Daniel Medvedev and get to where Novak is in the final? Or are we putting too much emphasis on Novak and actually we're missing a trick here? I want to see what Dominic Thiem and Daniel Medvedev do. And it's not...
Sorry, Rob.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Nadal's, you know, he looks like he's on a mission. But I think Rob is right, folks. I think we need to see the ATP Cup, don't we?
Yeah.
To see how they're playing, how they're moving. Even though it's a team tournament, I think it gives us a window of form just to go into Australia before we cement our predictions. Because right now we haven't cemented. Just so you know, we're just looking on what we think right now, but we both, I think, Rob, reserve judgment to change our minds before our final predictions before the Australia. But I think ATP, we have to have a look.
Yeah. Well, look, the ATP Cup is going to be a good one because you got Shapovalov, you got these great players in there. Okay. And guys, we are, and girls, of course, we are, when the tournament starts, we're going to get excited about the games. We're going to get excited about the matches, and we'll be looking at what's going to happen the following day and the day after that and the day after that, because that's when it all starts to unfold. So I am going to have my outright winner, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens on the day. I think there is another tournament, Johnny. Well, not another tournament, but it's a kind of in-between bit of fun where there's going to be 2 sessions in Adelaide.
Oh, exhibition. Yeah.
Which is going to be the group after the ATP Cup, but just before the Australian Open. It's going to be at the Memorial Drive.
Right.
And what's going to be exciting about that is that you've got some great players that are going to be playing each other. It's almost like a mini ATP final, really, because in that cup, they've already got agreement that Novak, Nadal, Thiem, Medvedev, Serena Williams, Halep, they're all going to be in that kind of one-day event. Now, I don't know how seriously they're going to take it.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're going to have Dominic Thiem versus Novak, for instance, or, you know, with Rafa or Daniel Medvedev. Now, you could look at that and go, well, it's almost like these are the warm-up games before the Australian Open. But if you see Dominic Thiem, for instance, absolutely thrash, say, Rafa, not that that would probably happen, but, you know, let's just say that happened. You're going to have a question mark, aren't you, over what is going to happen in the Australian Open. Plus, I believe these odds, well, we know these odds are going to change. These are what the odds are now. So I do want to think to myself, I'm going to put something down on whether it's Medvedev or Dominic Thiem or something like this. Because, look, once that ATP Cup happens and once they do that Memorial Drive Day, Dominic Thiem might go from 5-1 to a completely different odd. So they're going to change. They are what they are now.
They are.
But 5-1 on Rafa, very good.
It is very good. And I think we've got to now just watch and wait and see. And on that bombshell, guys, that's it from us. Until next time, see ya.